Hello, and welcome to the 7th Annual Global Summit of Kidney Disease Innovation, titled The Decade of the Kidney at Midpoint Opportunities and Barriers to Greater Innovation and Freedom for Disease and Disability. The annual event is proudly hosted by the American Association of Kidney Patients in collaboration with our allied partners at the George Washington University School of Medicine and Health Sciences. My name is Dawn Bates, and I am honored to serve as the AAKP National Ambassador from Iowa. I am also a care partner to my husband, Jimmy, who is a home hemodialysis patient. As his care partner, I encourage and support him to do his treatments as prescribed so that it allows us the freedom to travel and to live our lives on our terms. We are advocates for home dialysis and sharing our experiences and helping others to get connected to the right people to support that journey. The AAKP has empowered me as a care partner to be involved in every aspect of my husband's care and to have a voice with his healthcare team, especially as the disease affects us both. Since 2019, the Global Summit has served the global kidney community as the largest patients-led kidney disease innovation summit in the world. This year's event makes a critical milestone because in the midpoint of the AAKP-led innovation, the Decade of the Kidney, the global efforts has been mirrored across the world by kidney advocates, medical allies, government officials, and among people of goodwill, committed to the return of true patient-centered medicine. Throughout the first half of the Decade of the Kidney, we raised awareness about the increasing burdens of kidney disease worldwide and among people, communities, workforces, and governments. The efforts has also accelerated the determination to transcend status quo treatments, including brick and mortar dialysis, to the future of kidney care that will be determined by expansions in patient consumer care choice, targeted therapies that stop and slow the progression of kidney disease and prevent kidney failure, greater access to donated organs, new devices, and alternatives to human organs, including artificial, wearable, and implantable kidneys and xenotransplantation. We believe the time is now. As we move through the 5 years of the golden age of kidney medicine, where much progress has already been made, our patients, care partners, and clinicians, researchers, innovators, industry, and government leaders to accelerate our bold actions to push forward modern diagnostics, devices, therapeutics, and continue to remove outdated policies that block their adoption. No country is immune to the impact of kidney disease. But the good news is every person watching has a role in shaping the future for all people who were at risk for and living with kidney disease and can offer more hope, better outcomes, and greater independence and freedom from disease and disability. With that, I am honored to serve as the moderator for our session titled Global Progress in Home Dialysis Care and Accessibility. Joining us to kick things off is AAKP's good friend, Michelle Seger, Policy Director and International Home Dialysis Roundtable and Vice President at Venn Strategies. Michelle is a strong advocate to expanding access to home dialysis and brings deep policy expertise to her work. She helps lead global and U.S. efforts to elevate the voice of patients, clinicians, and promote innovation to kidney care. With legal background and expertise As legislative counsel on Capitol Hill, Michelle offers a unique perspective on policy and advocacy. She holds a law degree from the George Washington University. Please welcome Michelle Seger.
Thank you so much to AAKP and GW for having me here today. I am really excited to talk to you about the International Home Dialysis Roundtable's most recent project, which is a large-scale international survey of patients, care partners, family members, and other people who care about home dialysis access. We have some really interesting results to share with you today. I also want to thank again AAKP and also Vantive for their partnership on this project, as well as the International Home Dialysis Roundtable Steering Committee, which is comprised of many different organizations representing organizations around the entire world. A lot of you in the audience know us at the International Home Dialysis Roundtable. A lot of you have come to our events that we have had or participated in previous projects. But just for those who are not aware of who we are and what we do, we are a group that came together in 2020 during the COVID-19 pandemic. The original goal was to figure out ways to make sure that people continued to have access to home dialysis modalities even during the pandemic, to see what challenges they were facing and what people needed to succeed at home. After our first event, there was a huge desire from really everyone that was involved to keep the conversations going. The thing that really makes the roundtable special is that we are able to bring together clinicians and patients and other stakeholders who care about home dialysis, elevate them to the same level, and have really interesting conversations where we learn from one another. And folks wanted to keep doing that. So the roundtable resulted in a commitment from attendees and our steering committee organizations to keep working together to increase home dialysis penetration, uptake, and access throughout the world. So we have been busy since then. There have been multiple collaborations spearheaded by the IHDR. We published a white paper in Kidney Medicine. We published a research paper on peritoneal dialysis access sites. We created an online resource center for patients and clinicians to be able to easily access information about what members of the IHDR are accomplishing every year. We did some advocacy specific to the United States at the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. And then we've had yearly large-scale online roundtable events that I was mentioning before, where we have patients and clinicians who come together to brainstorm and figure out ways to make sure that home dialysis is accessible. So in 2024, our big project is the global survey that I mentioned a moment ago. We did the global survey in partnership with the AAKP Center for Patient Research and Education. And we wanted to really drill down on a few subject areas where we felt like more information was needed before we could really effectively advocate and figure out solutions. So those topics were dialysis modality education, how patients and families are making decisions about their dialysis modalities, whether patients feel that home dialysis is affordable, general attitudes throughout the kidney disease community about home dialysis, and the patient and caregiver care partner connection to advocacy and support in their region. We were really excited to see that folks were interested in filling out the survey. We had a really good response rate, which I'll talk about in a little bit. We also saw varying demographics, varying patient populations, and we got lots of different bits of feedback about home dialysis. It also explores ways to appeal to patients who are not already on a home dialysis modality. So we didn't limit the survey to only those patients who are on peritoneal or home hemodialysis. We also opened it up to in-center dialysis, patients with CKD who had not yet progressed to ESKD, as well as patients who have had a transplant. So we really tried to understand through the survey, what are some of the barriers that people are facing when they're trying to access care? Are there gaps in education? Are we needing more on the ground efforts to help people really understand the benefits of home dialysis and how these therapies work? So we got some really good actionable insights that we will talk through over the next slides, and hopefully will enlighten us about some advocacy that we could do in the future. Why did we even do this project? Why did we think we needed another patient survey? As I said before, the IHDR is really unique because we are able to bring together patients and clinicians to really stand on equal footing, have the same voice, and discuss issues related to home dialysis. And we wanted to be able to do that same thing, but sampling a much larger group of people than we're able to access through our events. Additionally, even though folks who sort of self select and come to our events, they are generally really enthusiastic about home dialysis, which makes sense. We're a home dialysis organization, so we would attract people who care about home dialysis. But it's still an underutilized modality globally. There are some differences that you can read through on the slide about different regions, different countries, but we know from all of that research that there is work to be done to make sure that people can access home dialysis. And it really matters because, as most of you or all of you probably know, home dialysis offers real clinical and quality of life benefits for people. And we think that patients deserve the chance to experience them, or at least to make a choice about whether they want to experience those benefits, no matter where they live in the world. That should give you a good idea of sort of the why behind all of this. And now we can get into what it shows us. So we will get into some of the data now. We'll start with demographics just so that you can understand the pool of people that responded to the survey. Really excited to let you know that we had 974 total responses. We were so close to 1,000, which would have been even more exciting, but I'm very happy with 974. If you look, we have gender and age on this slide. We have more male respondents than female by a good bit. And then in age, this is where we were a little surprised. We had a really large percentage of patients in the 18 to 24 bracket, followed by the 35 to 49 bracket. It's a little bit hard to tell if this is due to a lot of care partners or family members in those age brackets answering the survey to talk about an experience with a relative or a loved one, or if this is a reflection of younger patients who are responding to the survey. I tend to think when we get into the data a little bit more that it's probably a combination of both of those factors, because you'll see we did have a pretty high rate of care partners and family members responding. But we can talk about that a little bit more on the next slide. All right, so for location, you can see that we have a big location breakdown with lots of regions of the world represented. I think it's really interesting to point out that we had 42% respondents select that they are in Africa. This is a region that we were really excited to see some new information come out of. We understand that sometimes we can see research that is overweighted from the US and Europe. And so including some of these other regions that perhaps are not as equally represented in all the research that's already out there was something that was really interesting for us. You can see on there that we do have other regions, of course, as well. We did have an option for people to leave the demographic questions blank. So you do see a pretty big percentage of undisclosed. If I had a wish, I would wish to go back and say, you have to fill this out so that we understand. But we wanted to make sure that people felt as comfortable as possible when they were filling out the survey. And so if there were things that they didn't want to disclose, we said that was okay. So this slide really tells us who, in terms of the relationship to dialysis, who are these patients and caregivers and family members and all of that. So 14% selected dialysis patient, 21% selected care partner. Again, we have a big section of undisclosed. the one thing, like I said, if I could go back and redo the survey, is take away the option for undisclosed so that we would know exactly who they are. We also had transplant recipients who had been on home dialysis modality before or not, DKD patients, and then care partners of transplant recipients. So really runs the gamut of everybody who has a relationship in some way to home dialysis. So we were able to take the dialysis patient portion of the pie and split it out so that we could see who was in center and who was at home. It was pretty evenly split with 42% in center, 58% home. Then we went further and said, okay, for home patients, let's see what the split is between peritoneal dialysis and home hemodialysis. Again, pretty evenly split, 26% peritoneal dialysis, 33% home hemodialysis. Coming from the United States myself, I actually thought it was really interesting to have such a large percentage of home hemodialysis. In the United States, we see far more home patients on a peritoneal dialysis regimen than we see home hemodialysis. And so seeing so many home hemodialysis patients, I think, gives us, at least in the US, sort of a different perspective that we're not always used to. So I thought that was really interesting. So I won't read through all of these, but just for your reference, wanted to let you in on some of the survey questions that we asked. This is not everything, this is just a highlight, but really focused on the whole experience of home dialysis. So how did patients decide on their dialysis modality? Did people have any experience with other modalities outside of the one that they're currently on? We mentioned before the affordability of home dialysis. For patients who are not at home, what would make you feel comfortable? How were you informed? Who told you about your options? Are you getting information from a medical provider or are you relying on other sources? And we'll get into all of this as we move through the presentation. We have some detailed information about how respondents answered these questions. So first, we will talk about dialysis education. One of the questions we ask is just a general question, do you feel like you have had adequate information given to you about modality choices? The vast majority of patients answered yes, whether they were in center or home. They said yes, they feel like they had adequate information. Now, we have to dig into this a little bit more because that sort of begs the question, okay, if you are in center and you feel that you got adequate information about home dialysis, then why are you still in center and haven't chosen a home dialysis modality? Now, of course, there are legitimate reasons to want to do dialysis in a dialysis facility, just as there are legitimate reasons to want to do dialysis at home. And digging into what some of those are and how patients are seeing their options, I think could be a really interesting next step. We did it a little bit in this survey, but I think there's a lot more to learn. We also focused in this section on where patients learned about their modality options and whether they were informed by medical professionals. I think these are really positive results that are showing that in-center patients and home patients are getting information from their doctors and nurses and care team about their dialysis modalities. We also compared our results to some of these questions that were similar to questions that were in the European EDIS study of nephrologists. That study found that 72.1% of nephrologists self-reported that they provided information on all dialysis modalities. And our results are pretty aligned with that on this question. So I think that's good that there's consistency seen there and sort of adds legitimacy to what we found, given that it's very similar to what was found in another survey. Okay, so still talking about dialysis education. While we asked prior on the last slide whether patients got information from medical providers, we did take that a step forward and said, okay, now tell us all of the sources that you have gotten dialysis modality information from. You'll see here that we have nephrologists, websites, brochures, other patients, kidney advocacy organizations, nurses, other doctors, lots of different options to look at. So a lot of these patients reported getting information from clinicians other than nephrologists, which I think is really interesting. That is something that we have talked about throughout, that the role of primary care and other clinicians that you may see in your journey towards dialysis can also be a really important source of information. Sometimes you're seeing those clinicians before you even get to a nephrologist, because maybe a nephrologist isn't needed throughout the entire journey, or maybe things work differently in your country. And so I think it's important to note that it really seems to be a team effort here, and that a lot of different people as part of the care team are providing really necessary information for patients. So, as I said before, we also included questions in here about dialysis modality decision making. So, really trying to figure out how people are making these decisions about what they're going to do with their healthcare, and then why patients are choosing or not choosing a home dialysis modality. So, the top reasons that patients reported choosing a home modality were the belief that it would be less disruptive to their life, the influence of useful information from a trusted clinician, and the desire to be in control of their therapy and their schedule. This is all, I think, reflective of things that we have heard anecdotally throughout our event series. And so seeing it confirmed here through the survey of such a large number of people, I think is really helpful. We also asked about how the decision happened. Did you decide with the partnership of a trusted medical professional? Did you decide with your family? Did you decide on your own? You just decided what you personally wanted to do. Our survey showed that 44% of respondents indicated that they either decided on their own or decided with support from their family and care partners. Even higher number of home dialysis patients, which was 50%, answered this way. This is interesting and sort of unexpected. We talk a lot about shared decision making with medical professionals and how important that is. There's a large percentage of people who answered in this survey that that's not necessarily what they relied on. And compared to the Edith study, which I mentioned before, we see a pretty big difference. In that study of nephrologists, fewer than 8% of nephrologists reported that patients made their modality decision without clinical input. So there's some sort of gap here. And I think it could benefit from additional research to figure out exactly what is going on. And maybe we even want to think about, splitting this out by region or by age, or using other types of metrics to figure out, like, what is this pattern? Does it mean something? Does it not? It's just a really interesting and unexpected data point. I think it also underscores sort of the potential for more research into patient-centered conversations with clinical teams and how important those can be, and perhaps measuring sort of the impact of those conversations against, how patients are making their decisions. So I think there's a lot of things that are still open about this question that could potentially be looked into more. So this question was specifically for in-center patients to understand their attitudes towards home dialysis. So we asked, what would make you feel more comfortable performing home dialysis? Most participants, well, I don't want to say most, but the largest percentage were having a care partner or support at home. But you can see on the graph that there's really no consensus here. There's a ton of different needs represented. It's not like we can say, okay, if we made this one change, then every in-center patient would go home and do a home modality. These seem to be really individualized factors that apply to each patient, as their own human, and that makes sense. So it's everything from what I mentioned before, like having a care partner, to needing more information about home dialysis, to having concerns about needle dislodgement and other issues related to HHD, wanting to have better understanding of how this could impact their employment, better understanding of potential home modifications to make this a reality for people. So there's tons of different things that we could potentially dig into here and try to change individually to make a difference for these patients. So we also asked about patient empowerment because this is so important for people who want to do their dialysis at home, making sure that they feel confident, making sure they understand exactly what they're doing, they feel like they have the resources they need, and they can be successful. More home dialysis patients and care partners did report feeling like they have an active role in treatment compared to in center dialysis patients. They also reported that they feel like they share in the medical decision making process with the care team and that their care partners are included. This is really important because, like I said before, empowerment is a key factor in being successful in home dialysis. Patients are managing a lot of their treatment independently. Of course, they always have support from the medical team, but they're at home. And so they're having to have a really big sense of ownership and involvement over their healthcare, over the decisions that they're making. And so I think this is really important, making sure that patients and care partners feel like, they've got it. They are confident and they know what they're doing. So, what does all this mean? What's the big picture? I think this is really important because we see a large group of diverse patient, family, care partner, stakeholders who all care about making sure that people have access to the best possible care, the best possible outcomes. We can understand how individuals are thinking about home dialysis, and that can help us build better advocacy strategies to increase access and uptake. If we don't know what patients and their loved ones are thinking, then we can't create solutions that include them. And that's really important to make sure that the patient voice is really what is being paid attention to here, as well as other stakeholders like clinicians, like advocates, like loved ones. But the patients are really the ones that are doing the therapy every single day. We can also figure out ways by looking at barriers, especially gaps in education or things that patients need to understand better about home dialysis to figure out, okay, how do we improve those resources so that we can then improve broader adoption of home dialysis? And then I think finally, we focused a lot in the survey about communication with your care team, communication with your nephrologist, communication with other patients, with your family. And that is really helpful because it helps us understand the motivations behind choosing a certain modality and how people are really going about the decision making process. We really need to understand that if we're going to craft solutions that help make all of this easier and help make it more accessible. So, we are really excited to take this information and try to figure out, okay, what can be done here? How do we inform future initiatives, whether it's something that the IHDR is doing, something that an organization in a specific region or a specific country is doing, something that, a nephrology group wants to take and run with, something that a patient group wants to take and run with. There's really a lot of options. And so that's really exciting. Hopefully, this was helpful to all of you to see some snippets of what we found in the survey. We're really hopeful that we will be able to publish something more in depth in the next year or so with the IHDR and make sure that this information is out there so that people can learn from it. But we will keep you updated and hopefully have more good things to share in the future. So thank you again, AAKP and GW, for having me here today. I was really happy to share some snippets of the data that we found through the survey with you. I'm really hopeful that we'll be able to publish a more detailed analysis of the data in the coming months. And obviously that will be shared with everyone here. Hopefully this was helpful to you. And again, I really appreciate your attention today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michelle, for that excellent presentation. Before we move along, I have a few questions I'd like to ask you. First, the results of the international survey are compelling, and AAKP was proud to play a role in developing and disseminating. What steps do you anticipate? Are there any outcomes that lend themselves to further research or a deeper dive into a particular country?
Thank you so much for the question. Our big hope is to publish an overview article that would lay out a lot of the big conclusions from the data that we talked through today, as well as some additional details that we can share, that might spur new conversations amongst stakeholders about the patient and caregiver experience in home dialysis. It's really important to call out that we anticipate having patients serve as authors of this piece. Um, we did that in our previously mentioned kidney medicine piece as well, and it was really successful. It will really help us, I think, if we have patient co authors to solidify how patient centric their research really is. And we know that a lot of the highest read articles that are out there are ones that patients have co authored and demonstrated a real commitment by patients to be part of the research efforts in this space. I think something that might be interesting to look into more is a comparison of the patient experience versus the clinician experience during the education process and seeing exactly how those conversations are going, what works the best, what methods get through to patients. We see there's some alignment in our data between how patients and clinicians see their role. But there was that surprising answer where patients are exercising a lot of independence in the decision making process that we didn't necessarily expect. And so digging deeper, I think, into some of these dynamics might be really educational.
As patients and care partners, we know our voices, insights, and lived experiences must make it to policymakers. How do you feel the results of this survey will drive actual changes in laws, policies, and healthcare delivery?
So I totally agree with you. Bringing the patient voice to policymakers is so effective. Some of the best meetings that I've ever had have been where we have brought patients who are able to tell their personal story and help the policymaker understand the humanity behind a lot of these numbers and scientific studies that we typically bring them, helping them understand, how does this really impact a constituent in my district or my state or my province or whatever it is. So it's really, really important. The thing that I think is special, I mean, there's multiple special things about the survey, really, but one big thing is the fact that we had 974 participants. And so bringing those numbers that reflect real patient, family, and caregiver, care partner lives is really, really important. And so being able to say to a policymaker, yes, I can bring you 1 to 2 or even 5 individual stories, but now I can bring you 974 people through this one survey modality. That's really impressive. We sometimes really need the numbers to move the needle. And so now that we have that, I think it'll be really helpful to illustrate some of these big principles that we all talk about.
Looking forward, can we ensure that the future of kidney care encompasses not only innovation, but also treatment, choices, and dignity for the patient?
So I think this question really ties into what we asked in the survey about empowerment. It was really heartening for me to see that such a large number of patients and care partners felt like they really had a major role in the treatment of themselves or their loved ones, that they were engaged, that they were making decisions alongside the care partner or the care team, excuse me, that they felt like they had a voice. And so I think as innovations progress, patients have shown that they are willing, that they're, ready to take on the responsibility, that they feel a real sense of ownership over their healthcare future. And so when new things come out, patients deserve the opportunity to be educated and then given the choice of whether they want to take advantage of the new technology. They shouldn't just be assumed, that they're unable to adapt or that they can't do something new. And I think that's regardless of their disease state, their age, any of these other factors that we talk about, they should be given a chance because we saw how much of a role they are taking through the survey in their treatment. the more empowered a patient feels to really own their health, the better. And I think, making sure that patients have the access to these new treatment choices, new technological innovations, all of the things that we see on the horizon is really exciting and important.
And finally, as a strong home dialysis advocate, as we progress through the next 5 years of the decade of the kidney, how do you envision the International Home Dialysis Roundtable supporting increased awareness, access to home dialysis treatments across kidney communities worldwide?
Well, I think I said before that the unique nature of our forum as a place for clinicians to come as well as patients to come and have really frank, honest, open conversations with each other and learn from each other in a place that feels safe and feels like we're really in this together. We're trying to make things better for everyone. I think that's where our value really lies. And so continuing to create that space for people to come and express themselves and talk about what's going on and have sort of an open atmosphere that invites new ideas is my goal. That's what I think is really valuable and that I think is really important about what we do.
Thank you, Michelle, for your insightful presentation, partnership, and for your ongoing leadership in advancing our shared goal of increasing home dialysis access and advancing innovation. I am pleased to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Peter Rutherford, Vice President and Global Head of Medical at Vantive. Dr. Rutherford brings a wealth of experience as both a nephrologist and a leader in medical affairs. He began his career in academic nephrology in the UK, earned his PhD, and later served as a senior lecturer and consultant, where he helped to grow a successful home dialysis program. He has held leadership roles at Baxter, IQVIA, and Vifor Pharma, with a consistent focus on patient-centered innovation, real-world data, and improving outcomes for people with kidney disease. In his current role, he leads global affairs in new product development, physician engagement, and evidence generation. We are honored to have him with us today. Dr. Rutherford, I turn the floor over to you.
Thanks very much, Dawn, for the invite to this presentation. A big thanks to you, but also a huge thanks to AAKP and the George Washington University for giving me once again, actually, to present at the AAKP Global Summit. I'm delighted to be here today and presenting on creating opportunities to improve outcomes for people living with CKD. This is a critical element of all that we do, and I'm very grateful for the AAKP for putting on this global summit once again. I'm delighted to be the global medical head for Vantive. Some of you may be thinking, who are Vantive? Well, we're building on our 70-year legacy as the kidney care part of Baxter. We have huge number of interactions with patients across the whole world. And we're delighted to serve particularly our patients who are receiving home dialysis. We've got a committed workforce of over 20,000 that are really dedicated to advancing care for vital organ therapies. We're in an exciting time for our new company. We're an independent healthcare company, and we're really committed to advancing vital organ therapies. And of course, the kidney, well, for many of us, is the most vital organ. We exist to really empower patients, their families, and the clinicians who are looking after them. And that's why our relationship with the AAKP is so important for us. What are we aiming to do? Well, we really want to transform the care of patients with vital organ challenges. Part of that is around the acutely ill patient with sepsis, with acute kidney injury. We're not going to focus on that so much today. we're going to focus on the other elements of what we do. We really want to help preserve patient freedom by making home dialysis more accessible, simpler to perform, and able to be chosen by many, many more patients. We want to do that through particularly innovation in two areas. Firstly, through delivering advanced services to help the patient who's starting on home dialysis. This is a very challenging time, very new experience for the patient. They may know what PD is, but then the actual experience can be a challenge. So supporting patients at home with telecare and interventions to support their needs. And then critically, our patients are at home, and the digital support can offer them remote monitoring, and that can then lead through improved care delivery and care efficiency, so that the healthcare providers looking after the patient are aware of issues before they've gone too difficult and can intervene early. So we're delighted to expand our share source remote patient monitoring with advanced analytics. And then we're bringing the CAPD offering so that all patients with PD can have remote patient monitoring and can receive better care. It does, of course, require the intervention from skilled healthcare providers to monitor, to intervene, and to improve care. So that's our aim as Vantive, is to really integrate digital solutions and advanced services with our existing PD therapies. And what we really want to do is to deliver on the promise of those therapies around clinical outcomes, and in particular, empower patients. We are really delivering on one of our commitments to AAKP, and that's to advance the understanding and delivery of shared decision making from healthcare providers to patients with end-stage kidney disease. This is a critical step in the patient's journey from CKD onto dialysis. Many practitioners are very good at this, but not all. And many struggle with, well, how do I do this? How do I do this in practice? What are the methods that I should use? What are the tips of good things to do and the tips of things to avoid? So in all of our education, we're settling on the SHARE approach. This is a 5-step approach for shared decision making that involves exploring and explaining and comparing the benefits, harms and risks of each dialysis option through a prolonged, meaningful dialogue about what matters most to the person. And that's the lens that the practitioner needs to look through, the lens of what matters most to the person who's making the decision. This is a simple 5-step approach. Step 1 is seeking the person's participation, communicating that a choice exists. That's a first step. Still, many patients don't hear that choice is possible. And encouraging, and that's not a one-off, and encouraging the person to become involved as much as they want to in this discussion and decision. Step 2 is helping the patient explore and compare. This involves explaining benefits and risks. That's a hard explanation and needs to be done in a simple way. Step 3 is about assessing the person's values and preferences. This is the healthcare provider listening, actively listening. What matters most to the person who's making the decision? What's the lens that they're looking through? Step 4 is all about reaching a decision. In human nature, we all know that many of us prefer to avoid making decisions. I'm often told that by my wife, I find. But reaching that decision is very important, and it's deciding together, not deciding for, but deciding with together. And important, and recording that decision, making sure everyone is aware of that decision that is being made. And then step 5 is a very important step. It's evaluating the person's decision. A decision as big as this is not set in stone from the start, but needs to be evaluated. Is it reasonable? Are there any concerns? And to reevaluate that on future consultations so that everyone is happy. How we're doing this is to build this into all of our educational programs for healthcare providers. In fact, I'm presenting about this weekend at a big conference in Taiwan, where I'm talking about this very model and the use of it for shared decision making. But we've developed an innovative online course which is designed to empower healthcare providers to enhance their skills for shared decision making for end-stage kidney treatment choices. It's an online course with 4 modules that equip providers with the practical skills. It's short on academic background, it's strong on practical advice and how to do it to deliver effective shared decision making. The first module is all about the importance. What is shared decision making? How can it support treatment choice for people with end-stage kidney disease? Module 2 is about implementing that approach through the share approach that I've just described. How can you help people with kidney disease make that decision? Module 3 is all about that challenge of communicating risk. This is an area that needs particular attention. What are the practical elements of best delivery of risk communication alongside the benefits? And then module 4 is about how do I put this into practice? Healthcare providers don't work individually, they work in teams. So this module is all about how can we as a healthcare team put this into practice for the management of our patients. It's flexible. It allows, obviously, with an online course, colleagues can take this at their pace and allows completion at their own pace, anytime, anywhere. And we really hope this will start and continue the process of improving shared decision making. Another aspect of what we're doing around creating opportunities to improve outcomes is through bringing organizations together and then supporting global initiatives. So Vantive is delighted to be part of the International Home Dialysis Consortium. It was launched really last year, and the group has now produced a manifesto which was just published this year in Kidney International Reports. This is a joint initiative between the ISN, which has a global advocacy role for healthcare professional organizations, and the International Society for Peritoneal Dialysis, which includes many of the experts in PD and also experts in home hemodialysis too. And the manifesto is a declaration that, well, all forms of kidney replacement therapy are potentially life-saving and should be a key priority for all countries to make them available and affordable to everyone who needs them. And that home dialysis has special advantages, so that providing home dialysis, PD and home HD, holds the promise of enhancing patient experience, quality and equity in kidney failure care. So this is an important manifesto. These are the key elements of the global declaration that the International Home Dialysis Consortium has put in print. It's all about enhancing the awareness of the benefits of home dialysis to people with kidney disease, educating people with kidney failure about these choices, enabling people with kidney failure to choose the modality with shared decision making, educating and training healthcare providers, including nephrologists, nurses, primary care providers, dietitians, social workers, and technicians about home dialysis, engaging policymakers, payers, and the dialysis industry, such as Vantive, to support home dialysis growth. This is an initiative which is very important for global home dialysis, and we're delighted to be part of this. And alongside the critical patient support and advocacy organisations led by AAKP, I think this is another element whereby we can really have global action to support home dialysis growth. That global action needs to be translated into local activity and local delivery. Everywhere is different. Everywhere has specific challenges. It's a lot of work, but we're all together in this as we aim to create opportunities to improve outcomes. Once again, I just want to give a huge thanks to Dawn for the invitation. a huge thanks to the AAKP for this global summit and for the George Washington University too. Vantive is all about transforming vital organ therapies. We work with you. We work together. We work to improve outcomes. We can provide PD therapies. We can provide enhanced and integrated digital solutions and advanced services. Our promise is to support AAKP, is to support patients in being empowered to receive the best care, and then working with clinical care teams to help them deliver the best care. We are all together in this, and we are committed to make things better for our patients and the people living with end-stage kidney disease and those who care for them. Many thanks once again.
Dr. Rutherford, thank you for your excellent presentation. We are so pleased to have you as part of our global summit again. Before I let you go, I have a few questions I'd like to ask you. Baxter has long been a trusted global leader in home dialysis. As Vantive steps forward with a renewed focus on renal care, how do you think the global kidney community can anticipate or support Vantive in continuing and expanding excellence and innovation in home dialysis treatments?
Thank you. That's a great question. We're building on our legacy, and we're not going to forget that. That's an important legacy, and it's important things that we've got to live up to, because we have supported many patients globally and delivered life-saving therapy to them. So our commitment is to continue that legacy, but to expand on it, to enhance it. As we've described, we want to enhance that delivery through services, through digital support, of course, through new product development too, but also through the commitment from our own teams to support nurse education, doctor education, and support of patients with all of our delivery services, which is a critical element for the patient that's on home dialysis. We're committed to working together, and I think that's a renewed focus for us, working with organisations such as AAKP. This is our commitment. We want to take what we've done, but really enhance it. And we're focused now on vital organs. And for our conversations with AAKP, it's all about, of course, the kidney, which, as a nephrologist, I have a bias. It is the most vital organ. Whether that be chronic kidney disease or acute kidney injury, we build on our legacy, we enhance it, and we work together to deliver better outcomes for patients.
And finally, Dr. Rutherford, as we move forward into the decade of the kidney, how can the global kidney community most effectively increase the utilization of home dialysis therapies worldwide? And what role do you envision Vantive plays in that?
Thank you. For me, it's all about working together. It's working globally and it's working locally. It's working together across the different organizations and stakeholders. It's working across patient organizations. It's working across healthcare professional organizations. It's working with governments. It's helping governments understand the importance of chronic kidney disease and the importance of provision of home dialysis. It's making the kind of commitments that the International Home Dialysis Consortium has made at a global level, but then understanding really what's happening locally. What are the challenges around patient access? What are the challenges about patient education? What are the challenges about healthcare provider knowledge or even availability? What are the challenges about the system of care, about how patients get diagnosed with CKD and transition onto dialysis? And it's understanding the policies and the procedures and the payment systems in a country which either help or hinder home dialysis. It's understanding these and putting initiatives in all of them. Very rarely is any healthcare problem one thing. I wish it was, but usually it's a combination of things. So the first step is understanding the problems. Second step is working together with the solutions. We as Vantive see ourselves supporting you, supporting the healthcare providers, supporting individual providers as well as the organizations in understanding what needs to be done and then putting the actions in place to really help. So the shared decision making is a good example. We see this as a problem, then how Vantive can support is through innovative ways of delivering education around shared decision making. This is all about working together, and Vantive is committed to the healthcare community, but more particularly to the patient community, to work with you to improve outcomes.
Thank you, Dr. Rutherford, for sharing your time with us and for continued leadership in advancing global kidney care. And now to our final speaker for this session, Daniel Call, Vice President of Product Management and Training at Fresenius Kidney Care. With nearly 20 years of experience in hemodialysis device development, particularly home hemodialysis, Daniel began his career at NextStage Medical and later returned after earning his MBA at the University of Chicago. At Fresenius, he has led product development in home hemodialysis, peritoneal dialysis, and critical care. With a background in mechanical engineering from Brigham Young University and MIT, Daniel's expertise and contributions have been critical in advancing dialysis treatments and improving patient care. Please join me in welcoming Daniel. I turn it over to you.
Thanks, Don, and thanks also to AAKP and to George Washington University for making this event possible. As was stated, my name is Daniel Call. I'm the Vice President of Product Management for Home Hemodialysis here at Fresenius Medical Care, and I'm excited to be joining you today to talk about patient-driven product development. So why do we talk about patient-driven product development at all? Well, turns out patients are great innovators. So even more broadly, user innovation is actually a very large activity in the US, with over 5% of US consumers developing or modifying products that they own. And remarkably, 8% of that is done in the medical space. Why does that happen? Well, patients who are using products day in, day out, they obviously become the experts in what it means to use their product and what experience is right for them. And as they go through that process of innovating and changing the way that they engage with products, that can reveal unmet needs to companies that can then further refine our products in order to better meet their needs. Below here, you just see some quick examples I grabbed from social media of ways that patients have made very small innovations, but innovations nonetheless, in order to improve the way that they are able to use NextStage products in their actual treatment environment and in their life. Patient innovation is being recognized more broadly, little by little. One great example from a recent history where patient innovation drove a significant change in the industry was around solo home hemodialysis. So in the early teens, all home hemodialysis devices required a care partner. There were some users, some patients who weren't able to get access to home hemodialysis because of this, and so they were pushing to see some changes. And in a timely way, the FDA announced what they call the Patient Preference Initiative in 2013, which was an initiative that would allow them to use patient preference as a part of the decision in how they would be approving or clearing medical devices. Subsequent to this, at a Kidney Health Initiative in 2015, patients made the case at that meeting to the FDA that the care partner requirement was a problem and it needed to be solved. It was preventing some patients from getting access to this device and to this therapy. And from that, NextStage was then able to work with the FDA and with patients in order to achieve a solo indication in 2017. So that was a great step forward for patient access to home hemodialysis that was really driven initially by patient innovation. So how can we approach patient innovation and capturing this as an industry? I mentioned earlier social media. That is a very easy way to do this. A lot of patients are proud of the things that they invent, and they want to share them with other patients. And so they post them publicly, and then folks like us can see them and say, hey, this is highlighting a need or a gap that we should maybe approach in a product feature or in a new product that we could develop. A little more proactively from the company side is to go to surveys or to outreach interviews where we would directly reach out to patients with specific questions. And then the next step up from that is the formation of, say, an advisory board. And I'll talk about Fresenius Medical Care's patient advisory board here in a moment. Advisory boards can then be leveraged for co-creation workshops, for design sprints, much more engaging ways of bringing patients in, almost as if they were engineers or designers. And then maybe the most intense way of getting patient voice is embedding within the patient experience. And we were able to do that as well in a case study I'll talk about in a moment. So the case study I want to focus on today is around the development and the launch of what we call Guide Me software. So the Versi HD Cycler, which you see in the top right, was first broadly launched in the US in 2017. It had the touchscreen you see there, but we knew we wanted to make some changes to that. And so in 2019, we began a project to evaluate how we could build a better, more interactive experience for our users. We got some early concepts of that in March of 2020, which was 1 week before the COVID shutdowns began. That obviously radically changed a lot of the ways that we approached our day-to-day business. And in response to that, in order to make sure that we stayed connected to patients and to our users, we started our patient advisory board, which we have maintained in the post-COVID environment. We call it the patient advisory board. It does consist of both patients and care partners, both of whom are the natural users of the product. Our patient advisory board, as I said, started in 2020 with 11 attendees. We had 2 virtual meetings that year, and then it's just grown from there in a really exciting way. So the next year we had 8 meetings, and we added 8 more users. We expanded it from home hemodialysis to include PD users as well. The next year we had our first in-person meeting. So we had that towards the end of the year. In subsequent years, we continued a blend of virtual and in-person meetings. And up till at this point in 2025, we now have 25 members of our PAB. And the meeting cadence has become almost monthly, and we continue to have both in-person and virtual meetings. Since its inception, the PAB's logged almost 300 hours of meetings, which is it's kind of amazing when you think about that much feedback coming into the design process of a product, all from the patient voice directly. Here's a great picture. I love this. This is our first in-person meeting. So these were the folks who made this start to happen for the first time. Here's the team that I mentioned. That the in-person meeting in 2022. We started in 2020, and this was the team that was the initial patient advisory board at that time. They were involved very deeply in every step of the way, and I actually have some little video clips that they made here that I'll share as we go through the rest of the presentation, where they talk about their experience going through this. One of the things that they did is some of them took home 360-degree cameras that they then set up to have active during the setup, the treatment, the tear down after the treatment. That entire process was recorded so that we could then have engineers and designers use virtual reality to put themselves as if they were standing in the room during that entire process. So that kind of gets back to that immersion opportunity as a way of getting patient voice and patient experience. So that was another way that they participated in creating this. So let's hear from a couple of our PAB members.
And what did you suggest?
Like images. Images are incredible for everyone. I'm visually impaired. That's an amazing asset for me.
And I work a full-time strenuous job, so coming home, the next step is sometimes very important to see that next step. And
we look forward to the future.
Yep. See you guys.
All right. Thanks, Christina and Michael. So what came out of this work? I'm going to walk through what Guide Me software is today, and I'll tie back regularly to the way that it was shaped and formed in great detail by the voice of the patients themselves. So there are 2 main elements to our Guide Me software. One is what we call Guide Me function, which is a collection of screens that provide on-screen instruction in an interactive way. And the second part is what we call our enhanced displays. And enhanced displays take if you compare to the prior interface on VersaHD, they provide much more information at a glance in a way that's much easier to digest. And we'll look at some examples of that. So let's talk about the first part of that, the Guide Me. Guide Me is a button that is available to patients when they need to do certain operations where there would be a benefit of some guidance. So when they set up to prime the cartridge, when they're hanging bags, when they're making their access connections or other fluid connections, when they're done with the therapy, all of those times, there is an option to engage what we call the Guide Me feature. If a patient does this, they're then given a screen like you see on the left, which contains a static picture. So this is something we heard directly from patients. We said, do you want video? Do you want photographs? What do you want? And they wanted line art. They had opinions about how big it should be, where we should use colors, how we should use arrows to show motion or not. They felt that static pictures allowed a patient to move at their own pace through the guidance. And that, in combination with some simple language, would be more accessible to more patients. They wanted to have the option not to check boxes they didn't need to, or to skip around so they could go forward or backwards. They wanted that flexibility. They expressed that very strongly. So that became a part of how this interface, this Guide Me interface, works. One of the things that they said loud and clear was, once we understand how to do steps and use the system, we don't want to be walked through this. It's insulting. It slows us down. So whereas today, in an older system, you would walk up and not have any instructions, you would go from memory, set it up, and press start. They wanted to keep that functionality. They wanted to be able to just walk up, set up from memory, and then press start. But they knew that if they were being trained, or if they maybe had somebody helping them who was a little less familiar, they would want to be able to use that Guide Me option to walk them through the steps of setting up before then pressing start. So they wanted that flexibility, and that became an important part of the features of the Guide Me system. It's always offered as an option, never as something that you're forced to do. And that came directly from patients.
I'm a patient advocate, and I've been a part of the patient advisory board for a little over 3 years. I love that the company asked us as a team what we thought would be important to include in the new Versi HD with Guide Me. The initial feedback we provided was that we thought the font was too small, so they actually made the font bigger. We also looked through a bunch of images and chose which ones we felt would be the most helpful. And now here we are with the final product. And all of our recommendations have been included. And seeing this kind of progress and attention to detail is rewarding as a dialysis patient.
All right. Thanks, Milton. So Milton's talking about all the little details that patients weighed in on as we went through this process. And that ties into the second part of the display of the software that I want to talk about, which we call enhanced displays. So we took it as a challenge to try and provide the information that the old interface provided, but even more information, and provide it in a way that improved treatment awareness, was able to be more intuitively understood by patients at a glance. Here's an example of what that looks like. So on the left, you can see our Versi HD interface during a treatment. So there are some flow rates there. There's a pressure there. You really have to know what a Versi HD interface looks like and have a cognitive model for that in order to understand what's happening. If you contrast that with Versi HD with Guide Me software on the right, you can immediately see that the machine is in treatment. You can see how much time is left. You understand all the flow rates that you're looking at because they're labeled in plain English. You have a sense from the way that the home icon fills with green that you're about halfway through the treatment. You can see 3 pressures across the bottom. We actually went from 7 pieces of data on the left to 12 pieces of data on the right, and yet it's immediately more understandable. That was the effort that we were putting in. That's what we were striving for, that we worked through with the patients. Here's another great opportunity where we had patient voice in the modifications we made to the system. On the left, you see the Versi HD in an alarm condition where venous air has been detected. The user is able to see the name of the alarm, and that was basically the extent of it. On the Versi HD with Guide Me, the user again sees the alarm, and then they're immediately taken to a narrative walkthrough of how to resolve it through what we call the Do You See framework. So it says, do you see? And then it asks for possible conditions that could be causing the alarm. So the patient then is able to follow that, and once they see something that matches that, so do you see error in the venous bloodline? If they do, they would click on yes, and then they would be given instructions similar to the guide me instructions with, again, simple static images with a very selective use of color, minimal text on the left, in order to walk through resolving that alarm and getting back to treatment. Patients had expressed that they felt anxious during this time because the blood pump is stopped when somebody's treating and solving an alarm. And if the blood pump sits stopped for too long, you can be forced to end your treatment. So we provided a timer in the bottom right so that the patient knows how long the pumps have been stopped, how much time they have left to resolve the alarm. So they're able to move with a little more confidence as they go through that process. So let's hear from Rashonda, another member of the PAB.
They were so willing to take everything that we asked them to do and change it, from the font size to the color to just the glare of the screen. We even wanted to be able to change the scroll, how you were going to scroll, how the page was going to move up and down. And they took everything that we said and they put it into this guide me and they presented it to us, and it is amazing.
Thanks, Rashonda. So how has it gone now that we've put it out into the market? It's gone very well, not surprisingly. When you bring the patient voice heavily into your product, you come out with something that is going to work well for patients. So I have just a few quotes here from some of our earlier users, the nurses that were doing the training. Vanessa here was saying, a reduction in anxiety as patients go about setting up the system. She's more confident stepping away and giving them more independence early on because patients are able to engage with that Guide Me system in a more intuitive way. Doris from Fort Vancouver saying, hey, I was able to train a care partner on the machine in 8 days. And then on the 9th day, they were setting up the machine on their own and they were initiating treatment. So that allowed her then to focus on other principles to train on rather than just the machine setup. And a final one here, Bailey Stump, a training nurse, was able to prepare a patient to go home after 6 days of product training. They were happy that they didn't have to, use a binder or use a book or anything, nothing to memorize. They could just follow through that process, and they found it faster and easier to use. So, not surprisingly, by bringing that patient experience right into the product, it fit very well with the learning styles of the patients and the training needs of the nurses. So, in summary, what do we take away from this? For me, it's that VersaHD with Guide Me really validates the importance and criticality of patient-driven design. For us at Fresenius, patient voice is a design philosophy, not a checkbox, not something we do because we have to. We know that if we really engage our patient advisory board, we will get better products and products that are more likely to meet the needs of patients, which is why we're doing what we're doing. And it's we continue to expand the influence and the scope of that patient advisory board here. And so my call to action to anyone who is listening in that design space is make patient insights an important part of your process. Embed them early and embed them often so that you're really getting the product that the patients want and need. It's interesting. We had, when we got our 510K clearance for the VersaHD with Guide Me software, it came right at the time that we were having an in-person PAB meeting, just coincidentally. So all of the patient advisory board members were here at the office in person. We got this clearance. We announced it to them, and one of them said, "Oh, our product got approved." I mean, so that was very gratifying and rewarding to hear that they felt that strong sense of ownership about what had been developed in collaboration between our engineers and designers and that patient advisory board. And that really helps us, I think, as we think about the root cause of why we do all of this, which is developing products that help patients live their best lives and to help them really thrive in spite of having kidney disease. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel, for your informative presentation. I now would like to ask you a few questions before we conclude this session. First, with your extensive background in home hemodialysis, what do you see as most crucial innovations, whether technological, clinical, or system-wide, that could significantly improve patient outcomes and expand accessibility in this field over the next few years?
Thanks for that question. I think there are a lot of ways to approach that. I think that a key need for home hemodialysis to continue growing and to thereby be improving outcomes for for patients is to further enhance the clinical flexibility of the systems that are on the market or new ones that may be coming. I think one key area of opportunity is definitely going to be nocturnal home hemodialysis, where you can really take the burden of sitting on the machine away from the daily life of the patient. I mean, that's how peritoneal dialysis works. Basically, if you're using a cycler, you're able to get a lot of therapy without it actually impinging on your activities of daily life. So that's an area I think would be a key opportunity for manufacturers.
And finally, looking ahead over the next 5 to 10 years, what advancements do you anticipate in home dialysis? And how might these innovations help make it easier to deliver safe, effective dialysis in rural areas and countries with limited infrastructure?
I think there's going to be a lot of continued innovation in connectivity, in connected health, and even more integration between the systems that can monitor the patient's state of well-being and in conjunction with their nephrologist, better refine how they are receiving home hemodialysis. The question mentions other countries and things. And one of the challenges with home hemodialysis today is it is a somewhat more expensive therapy to provide. A patient has to have a machine. There has to be delivery of supplies to their house, things like that. And so there'll need to be innovation around cost reduction significantly in order to get into countries that are less economically advanced than where you find home hemodialysis today.
Daniel, I want to thank you again for being with us today. Your expertise in home hemodialysis technology and your dedications to improving patient care through innovation are truly inspiring.